All right, Nick, let's talk about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This is a once great organization, a football team that kind of dominated the college football world at a point in time, but since has fallen from that greatness, Nick, and particularly this year with former head coach Scott Frost. They were terrible. If we're going to be honest, they're terrible. Second to last in the division, only in front of Northwestern, which is no badge to wear this season. But Nick, I think Nebraska is a head coach candidate hotbed. Everybody wants to go there. There's a lot of opportunity. There's also a lot of expectations to go coach at Nebraska. And I want to know in the comments below, Nebraska fans, who do you eye in the head coaching hunt? Put yourself in the athletic director's position. Tell us, who would you pick to be the head coach of this Nebraska team, Nick? But what do we have going for the Nebraska Cornhuskers?
Yeah, so we're starting to hear from multiple sources, right? You always get rumors when every time a big program like Nebraska, has a head coaching vacancy. There's always rumors of different guys here and there, but it's always kind of out in the woods. Who knows what it's going to be? But we're hearing from multiple sources, whether it's The Athletic, that's a reputable source. Husker Online has noted this as well. There's some other sites too that have noted that none other than former Baylor Bears head coach, former Carolina Panthers head coach, former Temple Owls head coach, Matt Rhule is the number one front runner to be the next head coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And look, obviously Matt Rhule didn't work out in the NFL, but he does have a lot of college success. He's a turnaround artist. He went to Temple when they were terrible, turned them into a 10-win program. Went to Baylor when they were just completely redoing that whole team when Bryles and the entire staff was fired. He completely rebuilt that program into a 10-win contender that they still are, or at least were under him and still have the potential to be. And he has the ability to do, I think, the exact same thing here in Nebraska, because it's sort of that same thing, the same dynamic, a program that was, once great or had potential, bring in a good turnaround artist that can turn around, get the momentum flow in the right direction. I think it's a nice hire. I think it's the right decision. There's a good reason why it's the front runner. And I think he comes out ahead and gets this job in the end when it's all said and done. What are your thoughts on the Nebraska potentially hiring Matt Rhule and him being in the driver's seat to get this job?
Yeah, Nick, Matt Rhule just strikes me as a college guy. He strikes me as a guy like Chip Kelly, who also, he was so good at Oregon, went to the pros. They weren't ready for the Chip Kelly era. It didn't really pan out. And then he came back to UCLA for a while, and he was good there. So Matt Rhule kind of reminds me of like a Chip Kelly-esque guy where, he was so good at Baylor. He was so good at Temple. He made such a big difference in those programs. He goes to the Panthers. His style just wasn't really cut out for the pros. And now coming back, he might want to dip his toes in a little bit of a bigger organization, like a team that has been historically really great as Nebraska, and see what he can do there, Nick. I think, like we said, he is a turnaround artist. I think having him come to a school like Nebraska, that'll be the ultimate turnaround. I think you kind of like ink your name to a contract forever if you come in and put Nebraska back to their former glory, have them competing for a conference title there. And really, even if you get them back in the rankings, Nick, if you get them in the top 25, get them in some high caliber bowl games, that's all you really have to do in your first couple seasons if you're Matt Rhule to really get in the good graces of the Nebraska Nation, I think.
Oh, and you bring up a great point about, in 2 seasons getting to that level. Well, the fact of the matter is Matt Rhule's history is that he has done that in 2 seasons. He took over Temple in 2013. By 2015, they had won 10 games, won a bowl game. He went to Baylor in 2017. At the end of the 2019 season, they had 11 wins. They went to the Sugar Bowl, right? Nebraska fans, I'm sure, would love that kind of turnaround, right? Win 10 games, go to big bowl games, potential New Year's Day bowl games, things like that. And Matt Rhule has a history of that, and I think that's what he brings to the table. But here's what I really like about this Matt Rhule hire is that the reality of Nebraska in today's day and age, they do not have the recruiting power, the recruiting ability that they had in decades past, like maybe the 90s, for example. They just don't. It's just the way it works being Lincoln, Midwest. It's just harder to recruit than it is for a lot of other programs. Matt Rule's had to overcome recruiting challenges, right? He coached at Baylor, right? That's deep in the heart of Texas, going against A&M, UT, Houston, all these programs, TCU, LSU's right outside out. Oklahoma was just north of the border, obviously in Texas. So again, Matt Rhule at Baylor overcame a lot of these recruiting challenges and took that team to a Sugar Bowl. So he has experience being the underdog in recruiting and still finding a way to get quality players into his program and turning that program around anyway. And that's why I think it's just a perfect fit. It's sort of the opposite of Scott Frost. So Scott Frost at UCF, right, was a kind of a really good offensive mind and just knew how to use his players in the right situation. But that was that's a group of 5 team. It's a little different deal when you're going up against in the Big Ten, going against just higher caliber players, better, 4 or 5 stars versus 3 stars in a lot of cases. Just the reality of it. You need a guy who knows how to manage those kind of players and give them the best position, put them in the best position to win. Frost obviously did not do that. I think a guy like Rhule can, because he had experience with it both at Temple and at Baylor.
Yeah, Nick, and I think another thing that Rhule does really, really well is he builds a nice culture. You think about
Correct.
like the
100%.
turmoil that Baylor was in. He came in and brought stability, as you said, after Bryles had left. I think that that's a really big thing that Nebraska could use right now. Everyone talks about a locker room guy. Well, imagine if your locker room guy was your coach.
Yeah.
Ted Lasso effect. He comes in, gets everyone to believe, they buy in. He also he is decent as far as the X's and O's go. He put
for
on
sure.
some nice offenses at Baylor, at Temple. And I like the point that you brought up about recruiting, because one thing that Matt Rhule did, he did coach in the heart of Texas, and maybe he still can reactivate some of those Texas player
That's a great point.
pipelines that he has and funnel those guys into Nebraska.
Yeah, it's a great point. Again, he has the connections. I know it's not the same comparison. I don't want to go that far, but it does have the potential to be a Saban-esque kind of feel, right? Saban obviously had a lot of successes. He coached in the Big Ten. He coached, I think, at Toledo, before he went to LSU, goes to the NFL, doesn't work out, goes to Alabama. He's able to recruit very effectively, build a good culture there, like you mentioned. And obviously, Alabama became the powerhouse that it is because Alabama has the funding and the resources to do that. Matt Rhule has the same opportunity, right? The same kind of trajectory, a lot of success in college. NFL doesn't work out, goes to a well-funded top program that has a lot of good resources, knows how to recruit and build the culture. I think it just lines up for a potential huge turnaround here for Nebraska. If I'm a Nebraska fan, I'm really hoping for Matt Rhule because he just seems like the perfect guy for the job at the right time.